Below is the fully revised Chapter 1, with all location details corrected. Emma Sterling's alarm buzzed softly at 4:45 a.m., rousing her before the sky had even begun to lighten over Los Angeles. She lay in bed for a moment, staring at the glow-in-the-dark world map tacked above her head, the very one she'd colored herself after her school's Global Citizen project. Today wasn't a school day. Today she would walk into Continental's Los Angeles Regional Operations Center, right here at LAX, and cast her vote on the $2 billion, 0 cents. At 9 years old, sliding out of bed barefoot, Emma padded to her small desk and retrieved her slim, leather-bound folder stamped Board Member ID, Sterling. She flipped it open, fingers tracing the hot foil letters and the embossed card inside. Member, Board of Directors, Continental Airlines. It was exactly what she needed to prove she belonged at that long mahogany table. In her little bathroom, Emma splashed cold water on her face. She brushed her blonde hair into a high, bouncy ponytail. Next came her well-worn white sneakers, scuffed at the toes but scrubbed clean this morning, and her favorite gray leggings, stretchy enough to let her move freely but neat enough to look pulled together. She topped it with a pastel mou cotton tee, faded from countless washes but spotless. No rips, no tears, just unassuming simplicity. She paused in front of the mirror. Beyond the ponytail and faint circles under her eyes, she saw a girl who had spent the last 6 months poring over environmental impact reports, drafting passenger safety surveys, and building a 3-year carbon demand plan as part of Continental's Youth Advisory Council. She drew in a deep breath. This wasn't pretend. Downstairs, the kitchen light was on and the smell of whole-grain toast and scrambled eggs floated up the stairs. Emma's mom was plating breakfasts, eggs, toast, even a small bowl of fresh berries, while her dad filled 2 mugs with strong black coffee. Emma accepted 1 mug gratefully and settled at the table. "You look ready for the big leagues," her mother said, smoothing Emma's ponytail. "Continental Club Lounge might not serve waffles this early." Nova smiled. "I'll do fine on eggs." She took a sip of coffee, bitter warmth, and leaned forward. "Mom, do you think they'll let me speak directly with the CFO today?" Her father set down his mug and offered her a proud grin. "Absolutely. You've earned it. Just remember your slides on fuel efficiency gains and passenger safety metrics. Speak clearly, and don't let anyone rush you." Emma nodded, tapping her binder. Slide 1, year-over-year passenger volume. Slide 2, sustainable fuel partnerships. Slide 3, carbon saw program projections. Her heart thumped, equal parts excitement and nerves, but she kept her voice steady. By 5:10 a.m., the family's black SUV was gliding onto I-405, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn haze. Emma pressed her forehead to the window, watching the runway lights of LAX grow closer. A sign for Terminal 2 loomed, her gateway to the Continental Club Lounge and the Operations Center just beyond. At Terminal 2's security checkpoint, Emma's mom flashed her credentials. The guard barely looked up. A 9-year-old in leggings and sneakers hauling a binder was hardly unusual nowadays. By 5:25 a.m., they were weaving through the hushed corridors toward Gate 21, Terminal 2. The carpeted hallways smelled faintly of coffee and jet fuel. Before boarding, they detoured into the Continental Club Lounge, a quiet sanctuary of leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the apron. Emma slipped inside, her binder tight in her lap. The lounge was empty except for the low hum of the espresso machine and the occasional click of an early bird traveler logging into email. She spent 10 minutes rehearsing key phrases under her breath. "Our major synergy savings can fund up to 5% of the Sustainable Fuel Pilot Program. Expanding our carbon segment initiative will strengthen community partnerships along both coasts." At 5:40 a.m., a door at the back of the lounge opened. One by one, executives trickled in. The head of environmental affairs, the general counsel, and a few directors of operations. Each paused to offer Emma a warm smile, a small good morning that made her chest swell. The COO arrived last, crouching to Emma's height. "Emma, thank you for being here," she said sincerely. "We're eager to hear your insights." Emma stood, ducking under the armrest of her chair, and extended her binder. "Thank you. I've also prepared some questions for the CFO about integrating our sustainability goals into the merger roadmap." Heads nodded appreciatively. The lounge doors swung open again at exactly 6:00 IMM, leading into Continental's Los Angeles Regional Operations Center, a sleek glass building directly adjacent to Terminal 2. Inside, the main conference room awaited, a long mahogany table set with leather-padded chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the taxiways beyond. Emma slid into her seat between the COO and the Director of Fuel Strategy. She cleared her throat, centered her binder, and began. "Good morning, everyone. Today, I'll walk you through our proposal for enhancing fuel efficiency across our fleet over the next 5 years." The room was quiet but electric as she clicked to her first slide, a graph of international passenger growth. She spoke with calm authority, no hint of hesitation, about cost projections for sustainable jet fuel, the environmental benefits of carbon offsets, and community engagement programs that would involve youth voices. Outside, the first rays of sun lit up a Continental 737 lining up for departure, as if to applaud her points. When she transitioned to Q&A, the CFO leaned forward. "Emma, these numbers are solid. How would you recommend we finance the initial $200 million 0 cents phase?" Emma opened her notebook and consulted her notes. "I propose reallocating 5% of the merger synergy savings, about $100 million, 0 cents, and issuing green bonds for the remainder. That approach preserves our capital structure while appealing to ESG-focused investors." Murmurs of approval rippled around the table. The CEO, seated at the head, offered Emma a genuine smile. "Thank you, Emma. That's thoughtful and strategic." By 7:05 a.m., the meeting was adjourned. Emma packed her binder, her stomach now fluttering with pride instead of nerves. Her parents were waiting just outside the lounge doors. Her mother gave her a quiet hug. Her father ruffled her ponytail. "You were remarkable," her mom whispered. Emma grinned. "We did it, together." Outside, the sun had fully risen over Terminal 2 at LAX. Emma Sterling, plain-clothed, sneaker-clad, 9 years old, walked back toward the main terminal, ready for whatever came next. Today she'd proven that genuine leadership isn't about tailored suits or high heels. Sometimes, it's just a pastel tee, a binder, and the courage to speak up. Gate 21 was already buzzing when Emma and her parents arrived, though buzzing at 5:45 IUMM felt different, more subdued, like half-asleep murmurs echoing off polished walls. A few early flyers waited in line. Flight crews leaned against pillars, sipping coffee. The carpet underfoot was patterned in muted blues and grays, dotted with the occasional scuff mark from rolling suitcases. Emma tucked her binder into her backpack and stepped forward with her parents, heading toward the velvet rope that marked the first-class boarding lane. She felt a familiar thrill, just a little bit of triumph at the thought of slipping past that rope under her own steam. Her pastel blue t-shirt and gray leggings felt perfectly fine to her, and her sneakers, though scuffed at the toes, were recently cleaned. She'd never been one to dress up. She wore what let her move and think clearly. But this morning she realized she was stepping into two worlds at once, one where she belonged, and one where people judged her at a glance. Standing at the gate desk was Derek Wong, the flight attendant assigned to the premium section. Emma had seen him around before, tall, with a crisp uniform and a t-shirt white smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was in constant motion, scanning boarding passes, pointing travelers to overhead bins, directing strollers and scooters to the side. Everything about him said efficiency and exactitude, until he saw Emma. "Next in line," Emma said softly, stepping up just behind a distinguished couple in business attire. Derek looked up, eyes flashing. He examined Emma from head to toe, his gaze flicking from her sneakers to her t-shirt, then back to her face. "You," he said, voice loud enough for nearby passengers to catch. "Plain tee and worn sneakers? Back of the line with the rest of the economy riffraff." Emma froze. The words hit her like a cold wind. She looked down at her shirt, pastel blue, perfectly intact, then at her clean, if simple, sneakers. She swallowed hard. Around them, the line grew quiet. The distinguished couple exchanged awkward glances. A family in front of Emma shifted uncomfortably, as though they wished they could pretend not to be there. "I have a first-class boarding pass," Emma stammered, fishing the tiny card from her pocket. It was embossed with her name and seat number, 1A. She extended it toward Derek. He sighed, as if bored. "That pass is meaningless if you don't fit the part. First class is for first-class passengers only." Emma's cheeks burned. The sting of humiliation was immediate, sharper than she'd expected. She'd worked so hard, hours of research, endless slide edits to earn her place at that table. Now, at the threshold, it felt as though someone had just slammed the door in her face. Behind her, her mother opened her mouth, likely to protest. Emma raised a hand, begging her silently to stay calm. She didn't want a scene, she wanted her seat. She wanted to be heard. Deep inside, though, the unfairness of that moment coiled around her heart. Derek turned away, tapping the boarding list on his tablet with impatient fingers. "Move along," he said, not looking back. Emma nodded, voice caught. She stepped back from the velvet rope, hugging her backpack straps a little tighter. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. A single tear slipped down her cheek before she could blink it away. She felt her father's hand rest on her shoulder. "Emma," he whispered, voice soft but firm, "stay where you are. We'll figure this out." She found a small ledge by a nearby pillar and sat down, wrapping her arms around her knees. Her binder lay open beside her, pages fluttering in the gentle air current. If she could just get back in that chair, she'd finish her presentation and prove she belonged. But for now, she sat alone, a kid in a pastel t-shirt, feeling smaller than 9 years old. The lounge door opened behind her, and a couple of executives strolled out, smart shoes clicking, briefcases in hand. They paused at the gate, flashing Emma a quick, apologetic look before moving past. She caught a glimpse of sympathy in their eyes, and it felt like a small spark in the gray dawn. Time stretched. Emma watched families, business people, and a few students with backpacks file past toward the plane. She counted to 10, then to 20, reminding herself of her own breathing exercises. In and out, focused, calm. She repeated her mantra, "I belong here. I have a voice." She thought back to the United Nations briefing room, where she'd first learned what it meant to be a global citizen. She'd pictured herself standing before a crowd, sharing ideas without fear. Now, a flight attendant's shorthand judgment had tried to take that away, but she wouldn't let it. Beside her, her mother sat down, wrapping an arm around her. "I'm sorry," her mother said quietly, gentle enough that Emma didn't have to look up to know she meant it. "I'm so sorry that happened." Emma nodded, pressing her cheek into her mother's side. "It's okay," she said, though her voice wobbled. "I know who I am." Her father joined them, placing a reassuring hand on Emma's back. Together they sat in silence, an island of calm amid the gentle chaos of pre-boarding. After a few minutes, just enough for the sting to dull but not disappear, a familiar feeling returned: determination. Emma straightened, wiped her eyes, and patted her binder. Whatever it took, she would speak. She would use her voice to turn this moment around. Behind the velvet rope, Derek continued processing passengers, oblivious to the storm he'd stirred. But Emma was no longer invisible. The unfairness of his words had lit a fire inside her, a reminder that true authority came from knowledge and conviction, not just from a uniform. She stood and opened her binder again, fingertips brushing the edge of the first page. Slide 1. Passenger Volume Trends. She inhaled deeply, steadying her shoulders. When the time came to board, she would walk right up to that rope and claim her seat. No more hesitation, no more shrinking. And somewhere in the gentle roar of the airport, Emma's heart pulsed with the quiet power of someone who refused to be defined by someone else's blink or by a single unfair word. She would move forward. She would be heard, because she belonged here, too. Emma tucked her knees against her chest and let out a slow breath, the echo of Derek Wong's harsh words still ringing in her ears. The hum of Gate 21 had resumed around her, luggage wheels clicking, flight announcements murmuring over the speakers. But for Emma, it felt as if the entire terminal had fallen silent. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her well-worn teddy bear, its fur matted, but still soft. Clutching it tight against her heart, she pressed her cheek into its worn ear and let her eyes fill with tears she refused to let fall. She'd never been one for cries or complaints, and this wasn't going to be the moment that broke her. Instead, she took another deep breath, inhaling the cool, recycled air of the terminal. She closed her eyes and counted in her mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, exhale. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, exhale. With each cycle, her racing thoughts slowed, her heart beat in a steadier rhythm. Around her, passengers glanced her way. A woman in a business suit paused mid-step, concern etched on her face. A little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, whispering something that made her look over with sympathy. Emma squeezed her bear tighter, fighting the urge to shrink even smaller. She wasn't going to let their pity define her, either. She pressed her back against the cool metal pillar, wrapping her arms around both binder and bear. The binder's leather cover felt smooth under her fingers, her board member ID card safely tucked inside. I belong here, she reminded herself. I have a voice that matters. She pressed her palm to the binder as if it were a shield. A flight crew member breezed past, carrying a tray of coffee cups toward the premium lounge entrance. Emma stared at the back of his crisp uniform, imagining that same tray being offered to her, her name printed on a mug just like her board member ID. She allowed herself a small smile at the thought. She'd earned her spot, and she was not going to cede it because someone misjudged her by a t-shirt and sneakers. Her gaze drifted to the velvet rope again. Derek was still scanning passes, calmly, methodically, as if nothing had happened. But Emma's mind was churning. She pictured herself standing before the board of directors in New York, delivering her presentation on carbon seg programs with quiet confidence. She could feel the click of the remote in her palm, the hush of the room as she spoke. She would not let one unfair moment derail her. She squeezed her bear's paw and whispered, "We've got this." The soft breeze from the departure desk skimmed her ponytail. She straightened, brushing imaginary dust from her leggings, and wiped her cheek. No more tears. It was time for silent resolve. Emma glanced at her parents, who stood a few feet away, speaking quietly with each other. They caught her eye and offered thumbs-up signs. She nodded back. They believed in her, and she believed in herself. Slowly, she slid one leg over, pushing herself up to stand. She tucked the bear back into her backpack, but kept her binder firmly in hand. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted. She felt her heart pounding, but this time it was from purpose, not fear. She took a step forward, then another, placing her foot just beyond the velvet rope. She held her breath, but only for a moment before exhaling and pressing onward. Heads turned as she approached the gate desk. Emma's stride was calm, measured, the same pace she'd practiced in front of her mirror at home. Derek Wong looked up, his eyes narrowing as he recognized her. For a heartbeat, Emma's resolve wavered. Those eyes could still pierce her confidence, but she steadied herself, recalling every slide, every data point she had memorized. "Excuse me," she said, her voice low but steady. It surprised both of them just how clear it sounded. Derek folded his arms. "Yes? I'm Emma Sterling," she began, pressing her binder against the counter so he could read her name. "Emma Sterling, member, Board of Directors. I have first-class boarding privileges. I belong on this flight." The terminal held its breath. Passengers leaned in, curious. Derek's hand stilled on the tablet. Emma pressed on. "I won't ask for special treatment. I just need to be where I've earned the right to be." He stared for a moment, then tapped the tablet. The screen flashed her name in bold. Derek's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. "Go ahead." Emma exhaled, the tension draining from her shoulders as she slipped past the rope. Around her, passengers offered quiet applause, just a few hands clapping, but it felt like an orchestra. She set her bear on the counter momentarily, picked up her boarding pass, and slid it under his scanner. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible. Derek's expression softened. "You're welcome, Miss Sterling." She gave him a small smile, no triumph in it, just calm assurance, and turned toward the jetway. As she walked away, she heard the murmur of approval behind her, the soft click-click of cameras on phones. Emma didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward, thinking only of the long mahogany table and the moment when she would stand and speak. Because she had found her voice in silence, and now nothing could take it away. Emma paused at the top of the jetway, steadying herself against a sudden gust of wind that swept across the tarmac. In that moment, her mind drifted back to the crisp autumn afternoon 6 months earlier, when an unassuming manila envelope first changed the course of her young life. It had arrived in the mail one breezy October afternoon, neatly addressed in a formal serif typeface. Miss Emma Sterling, Youth Advisory Council, Continental Airlines. Emma, then still navigating homework and weekend soccer games, had found it waiting on the kitchen counter beside her mom's laptop. She remembered the way her heart had skipped as she slid her small fingers under the envelope flap and pulled out a single sheet of heavy, ivory cardstock. The Continental crest was embossed at the top, followed by the stamped seal of UNESCO. At the bottom, in flowing script, were the words that made her breath catch. "By the authority vested in me by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, you are hereby appointed Global Education Ambassador with full diplomatic privileges and responsibilities." She'd read the sentence twice, then a third time, her eyes widening with disbelief. A global ambassador? Her? The idea felt like a dream. She bolted down the stairs, clutching the letter to her chest. Her parents were in the living room, Dad immersed in a finance report, Mom sorting through dinner plans. "Mom! Dad! Look!" Emma thrust the letter into their hands. For several suspended seconds, neither of them spoke. Then her mother's eyes filled with tears, and her father pumped his fist in the air in a quiet cheer. "Emma, this is incredible," her mother whispered, smoothing Emma's hair. "You're really going to the United Nations?" That evening, over steaming bowls of macaroni and cheese, they talked through every detail. The letter explained that Emma would receive a special diplomatic passport, granting her expedited travel privileges. She would carry an official UNESCO ambassador card, recognized by governments around the world. Her first assignment, to attend the Youth Education Summit at UN headquarters in New York City, where she'd deliver a short speech on education as a human right. Emma could hardly sleep that night. She lay in bed imagining herself walking the marble corridors of the United Nations, the great Secretariat building looming behind her like a fortress of ideals. In her mind's eye, she practiced her speech over and over, pacing her bedroom, reciting lines about equal access to books and safe schools for children everywhere. When the day finally arrived, Mom and Dad packed her like they were gearing up for battle. Carefully folded dresses, crisp white blouse, and of course, her embroidered blazer with the Continental crest stitched over a tiny UN emblem. But it was the passport, slender, graphite gray with the gold UN symbol stamped into the cover, that made Emma gasp. She traced her name on the visa page, Sterling Emma Louise, and ran her finger over the stamped Ambassador of Education under the date. They arrived at UN headquarters on a clear November morning. The building's massive bronze doors towered over them, and the flags of every nation snapped in the breeze along the driveway. Emma's heart thundered as she stepped onto the polished granite plaza. Security politely scanned her passport and ambassador card, then waved her through a side entrance reserved for dignitaries. She felt like royalty as she walked past swirling marbled columns into the cavernous lobby, flooded with light. A group of children from different continents had gathered in a small reception room, each wearing their own country's school uniform or traditional dress. Emma felt a flicker of nerves as she realized how varied their experiences must be. Some came from places scarred by conflict, others from villages where books were scarce. It was humbling. Yet when the UNESCO representative, a tall woman with kind eyes, gently tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Emma, we're honored to have you join us," the young girl's chest swelled with purpose. On the dais, before the main assembly hall, Emma stepped up to the microphone, her legs trembling just slightly beneath her navy skirt. She gripped the lectern and looked out at the sea of faces, diplomats, educators, journalists. Then took a breath and began. Education is a right, not a privilege. Every child, whether in New York, Nairobi, or Noumea, deserves a safe space to learn and dream. Her voice rang with conviction. The words felt alive on her tongue. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, an acknowledgement that her words had landed. Then the hall erupted in polite applause, punctuated by the soft flash of cameras. In that instant, Emma understood. This was more than a title. It was a responsibility she would carry wherever she went. Back in the present, standing on that aluminum gangway under the haze of tarmac lights, Emma let the memory settle. She smoothed the edge of her pastel muti and adjusted her grip on the binder. The diplomatic passport and UNESCO card now lay deep in her backpack, symbols of a power she rarely flaunted, but always carried. She recalled the summit's closing ceremony, the stamp of the UN Secretary-General's pen on her official certificate, the hush as he called her name, the shifting of cameras as she accepted a bouquet of white lilies. She felt that same hush ripple through Gate 21 this morning, a moment when the world paused to judge her by appearances. But she also remembered the confident hush of that UN podium, when judgment was set aside and the merit of her words carried her forward. Emma inhaled, tasting the faint tang of jet fuel mixed with determination. The flashback had given her something more than pride. It had reminded her that real authority comes from purpose, not permission. Now, with her credentials tucked safely away, she was ready for whatever came next. Drawing a steadying breath, Emma lifted her chin and stepped onto the plane, her heart echoing the quiet confidence she'd first discovered beneath those vaulted ceilings at the United Nations. Emma's parents watched her retreat down the jetway toward first class, her pastel muti a tiny beacon against the gray of the terminal. Once she was out of sight, her mother took a steadying breath and turned to her husband. "Jem," she said quietly, voice taut with both relief and residual alarm, "we have to make sure nothing else goes wrong." He nodded, eyes warm but serious. "You're right." They stepped behind a stainless steel column just outside the Continental Club lounge. Emma had insisted on boarding herself. She'd marched right up, binder in hand. But her parents knew how close she'd come to being pushed aside entirely. "Get UNESCO on the line," Jim said, fishing his phone from his coat pocket. His fingers trembled for a second as he dialed headquarters' diplomatic desk. His wife perched on a low ledge, arms wrapped around her knees. Every ring felt like an hour. Finally, a calm female voice answered. "United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, Diplomatic Liaison Office, this is Sarah Johnson. How may I help you?" "Sarah, this is Carol Sterling," Emma's mother said, lifting her chin. "I'm calling about my daughter, Emma Sterling, Global Education Ambassador to UNESCO. She was nearly denied boarding at LAX Gate 21 despite her diplomatic passport and ambassador card." There was a pause. Carol's stomach knotted. Behind her, footsteps echoed as other passengers drifted by, oblivious. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Mrs. Sterling." Sarah's voice was soothing, professional. "Can you give me the details?" Carol took a breath. "Yes. Around 5:45 this morning, Gate 21 attendant Derek Wong refused to scan Emma's first-class boarding pass. He said her attire, just a simple tee and sneakers, didn't qualify her for premium boarding. Emma showed him her UNESCO ambassador card and diplomatic passport, but he waved her away. "Thank you," Sarah said. "Please hold." Carol shared a look with Jim, both hearts hammering. A few seconds later, Sarah returned. "Mrs. Sterling, I've confirmed Emma's credentials in our system. She holds full diplomatic privileges as per the original appointment paperwork. I'm placing an immediate call to Continental's LAX station manager and their corporate security office. They will issue a directive, allow Ambassador Sterling to board without further delay, and extend formal apologies." Carol's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you, Sarah. I just want to protect her dignity." Sarah's tone softened. "I understand, and we will document this incident for our records. A formal diplomatic note may follow if necessary." "Thank you," Carol said, barely above a whisper. She hung up and folded the phone into her jacket. Jim exhaled, his expression easing. "That's exactly what we needed." They lingered for a moment, letting the promise of intervention sink in. Carol smoothed her skirt and glanced toward Gate 21. Emma's silhouette appeared at the end of the gangway, slipping through the door marked first-class boarding. Her stride was confident, as if nothing had happened. "She did it," Jim said softly. "She made it on her own." Carol nodded, pride and maternal concern mingling in her chest. "Yes, but we have to make sure everyone else knows she belongs." They straightened, set their shoulders, and moved toward the boarding area. Carol reached into her purse and brushed her fingers over Emma's UNESCO ambassador card. A small rectangle of heavy plastic with the golden UN seal at its center. It felt reassuring in her hand, a reminder that Emma's role was more than ceremonial. At the gate desk, Derek Wong was scanning a line of passengers into the cabin. His posture was rigid, and every so often his gaze flicked toward the jetway door as if expecting someone. Carol watched him for a moment, considering whether to say something, but she and Jim decided it was better to let UNESCO's call speak loudly enough. They both stepped up to the counter, presenting Emma's boarding passes together. Derek looked at Carol's name, then at Jim's, and for a moment his expression flickered, an acknowledgement that something had shifted. He tapped his tablet, the screen flashing green. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Sterling, and family," he said, his voice neutral but kinder than before. "Thank you," Carol said, offering a polite nod. Jim followed, and they entered the jetway together. Inside the plane, Emma was already settled in seat 1A, her bear tucked on the seat beside her, her binder closed on her lap. She looked up as they appeared, eyes wide and hopeful. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice bright. Carol sank into the aisle seat beside her daughter and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You did great," she whispered. Emma hugged her bear, then her mother, before turning to her father. "I was so scared." "I know, sweetheart," Jim said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But you stood up for yourself." Emma nodded, pride mixing with the last tremor of her earlier fear. "I did." Carol reached into Emma's backpack and produced the diplomatic passport. "Look who wants to say hello to you," she teased, holding it up. Emma's eyes lit up as she took it. She traced the gold-embossed letters on the cover. United Nations, Diplomatic Passport. Then she flipped it open to where her name was stamped alongside an Ambassador of Education entry. "It's still mine," she said, voice steady. "Nothing can take it away." James smiled at the two of them. "And if anyone tries, they'll hear from Sarah at UNESCO." Emma leaned back in her seat and exhaled. The plane's engines thrummed to life. Outside the window, the early morning light painted the runway in pastel shades. Emma closed her eyes and imagined the UN chambers, the assembled delegates, the hush before her voice carried their message of hope. Carol reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "Promise me something," she said. Emma squeezed back. "What?" "That you'll use that confidence not for revenge, but to keep making things better for other kids." Emma nodded, her ponytail bobbing. "I promise." The engines roared louder, and the plane began rolling toward the taxiway. Emma pressed her forehead against the window for a moment, watching the terminal fade behind her. Then she turned to face forward, letting the sense of possibility wash over her. She was on her way to New York. No, to the very heart of change, and she wasn't just along for the ride. She was driving the conversation. And all because her parents had sown the seeds of her quiet retribution, planting hope and the promise of rightful authority in the voice of a 9-year-old girl who refused to be defined by a single glance. 821 had emptied by the time Emma settled into her window seat in first class, her teddy bear tucked under one arm, her binder closed softly in her lap. The engines revved and the cabin lights dimmed to signal imminent departure. Emma leaned back against the plush seat, closing her eyes for a moment of quiet, until her father's soft beep interrupted her. "Emma, look," he whispered, turning his phone so she could see. On the screen was a grainy video clip. Derek Wong at Gate 21, uniform crisp, voice sharp as he waved away a small figure in a pastel mule t-shirt. He barked, "First class is for first-class passengers only," and the camera lingered on Emma's stunned face moments before she backed away. "Let her board," read the caption. Beneath it, the view counter ticked wildly. 12,000 views, 18, 0, 25, 0, and climbing. Comments scrolled by. "This is so wrong. How dare they? UNESCO diplomat forced to stand in line. Let her board now." Emma's eyes fluttered open, her heart thumped, but not with fear, excitement. "People are seeing what happened," she said softly. Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. "Yes, sweetheart, and they're on your side." Across the cabin, a flight attendant appeared, phone in hand. She whispered to the purser, who exchanged a concerned glance with the lead flight attendant. Soon their hushed conversation rippled down the aisle. "That video is blowing up on social media. Letterboard is trending. The station manager is on a call with LAX right now." For Emma, it felt like warmth spreading through her chest. The solidarity was palpable, even in this semi-dark cabin. She lifted her head, peeking over the drink cart as the flight attendant discreetly tapped at her tablet, bringing up the live feed. Thousands, then tens of thousands were watching, sharing, and demanding justice. Back at Gate 21, Derek Wong's morning efficiency had given way to frantic taps on his tablet. He scrolled through feeds showing reposts by major influencers. news outlets teeming with outrage, and one local TV station clipping the moment with a headline, "UNESCO Ambassador age 9 snubbed by first-class attendant." His stomach churned. He tapped the screen, summoning the station manager, but the call went straight to voicemail. On board, Emma's father lowered his phone. "It's everywhere," he said, voice tremulous with equal parts pride and surprise. Emma nodded. "It means they can't ignore it." Her mother smiled. "Exactly. They have to deal with this." She brushed Emma's hair back from her forehead. "And we'll be there when they do." In the galley at the front, flight attendants clustered around a tablet. One swiped through the video, another tracked retweets. Their uniforms looked different under the fluorescent cabin lights. Less crisp than Derek's, but now carrying the weight of public scrutiny. The purser's voice floated back. "We need to prepare for an announcement as soon as we land. This can't wait until the merger meeting." Meanwhile, Derek sat alone at Gate 21's now empty desk, the boarding area deserted. The terminal monitors flashed, "Let her board" in bold type next to the flight number. Passengers in nearby gates peeked over, murmuring to one another. His tablet buzzed relentlessly. Emails, text alerts, social media notifications. He forced himself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. But each exhale only tightened the knot in his chest. He tapped into the Continental app, pulled up Emma Sterling's profile, and stared at her photo. Bright eyes, determined smile, diplomatic credentials. He'd been in the business long enough to know when he'd messed up. Back in the air, Emma unzipped her backpack and pulled out her tablet. She tapped the trending hashtag and watched it climb. 100,000, 200, 0. She scrolled through comments from around the world. Parents empathizing, educators applauding, fellow travelers vowing never to fly Continental again until they fix this. At that moment, the lead flight attendant appeared at Emma's seat. "Miss Sterling," she said, voice gentle, "I just wanted to say thank you for standing up for yourself. You've inspired a lot of people today." Emma's throat constricted. She blinked twice, then managed a small smile. "Thank you." Elsewhere on the plane, a journalist from Travel Insight magazine leaned forward, tapping notes into her phone. She'd been tipped off by one of the retweets and now planned to cover Emma's story as part of tomorrow's feature. Down below, at LAX's Continental Operations Control Center, the station manager finally picked up Derek's messages. He'd been on the phone with corporate security when the call from UNESCO had come through in Chapter 5. Now, the trending hashtag made the issue impossible to postpone. He issued the order, issue a formal apology to Ambassador Sterling upon deplaning, and draft a public statement addressing the incident. Back on the plane, Emma's family gathered their things as the captain's voice crackled over the PA. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with us today. We appreciate your patience and support. As some of you may have seen online, there's been an incident involving one of our young ambassadors. We assure you Continental Airlines is addressing the situation, and we look forward to reaching our destination shortly." A ripple of applause followed. Emma glanced around. First-class passengers offering nods, some mouthing sorry or well done. She felt a flush of gratitude for every witness, every person who refused to stay silent. Her mother leaned in. "See, this is the power of a single voice. And hundreds of thousands more." Emma closed her eyes, letting that truth settle. It wasn't just about her seat or her speech at the UN summit. It was about teaching the world that respect wasn't reserved for those in suits or high heels, but for anyone with the courage to speak up. As the flight began its descent toward JFK, Emma looked out at the clouds painted gold by the setting sun. The social media storm was far from over. Hashtag by hashtag, her moment of unfairness had become a rallying cry, reminding people that sometimes justice requires more than a pass. It needs a chorus. And for Emma Sterling, that chorus was just beginning. Emma sat upright in her first-class seat, the sun-bleached sky just emerging beyond the windows, when her father's tablet vibrated again. He glanced at it, eyebrows rising in surprise, and leaned in to whisper, "Emma, you need to see this." He swiped the screen to a live video feed of Gate 21 back at LAX. In the center of the frame was Derek Wong, his crisp uniform still perfectly pressed even this late in the day. He scrolled through his tablet, face growing paler by the second. "Look at his tablet," her father said, tilting the device so Emma could see. On the display, 2 incoming video calls blinked insistently. One marked Officer of the UN Secretary General, the other Director, UNESCO Diplomatic Affairs. Emma's heart thudded. 2 calls from the highest echelons of the United Nations, demanding Derek Wong's immediate attention. "Is that real?" she whispered. Her father nodded. "It says, urgent, Global Education Ambassador incident." A flight attendant hovered at their aisle, keeping her voice low. "Excuse me, Miss Sterling. There's word from the captain. There's an important update for you downstairs." Emma tucked her tablet away and rose, smoothing her pastel mu tea one last time. Beside her, her mother stood too, exchanging a quick, resolute glance with her father. They followed the attendant to the galley, where the lead flight attendant held a fresh tablet. "Miss Sterling," she said gently, "both the UN Secretary General and the UNESCO Director have formally requested a debrief. They're insisting a formal acknowledgement from Continental be issued as soon as we land." Emma nodded, swallowing hard. This was more than she'd ever imagined. 2 global institutions, both calling her Ambassador Sterling. "Thank you," Emma said, voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Please let them know I'm honored to speak with them." The attendant tapped the tablet and murmured into her headset. Emma could hear the faint echo of a busy office, voices raised in urgent discussion. Back at LAX, Derek's world had collapsed into a series of rings and blaring alerts. He staggered behind the now empty Gate 21 desk, fingers shaking as he accepted the first video call. On his screen was a sharply dressed aide, the office of the UN Secretary General watermark behind her. "Mr. Wong," she said crisply, "this is Camille Laurent on behalf of Secretary General Guterres. I understand an incident occurred this morning involving our youngest education ambassador, Emma Sterling. We require immediate confirmation that Ambassador Sterling's diplomatic privileges be respected." Derek swallowed. His mouth went dry. "Of course," he managed. "She has boarding privileges, unrestricted." The aide's gaze was steady. "Then we expect a formal apology to Ms. Sterling and an assurance that this will not happen again. The Secretary General himself is monitoring this matter." With that, the screen went black. His tablet buzzed again almost immediately. He swiped reluctantly to the next call. "From UNESCO's Diplomatic Affairs Office." This time the voice was a calm baritone. "Mr. Wong, this is Dr. Amina Hassan, Director of UNESCO Diplomatic Affairs. Ms. Sterling's appointment as Global Education Ambassador carries full diplomatic immunity under Article 38 of the UN Charter. Any refusal to honor those credentials constitutes a breach of international protocol. We trust Continental Airlines will issue a directive to all staff." Derek's shoulders sagged. Yes, ma'am," he said, voice cracking. "Understood." His final lifeline came in the form of a station manager's message, texted rather than called. "Allow Ms. Sterling any boarding lane, any flight. Apology drafted in 3 minutes. Do not deviate." He looked up at the empty terminal monitors, still displaying "Let her board" in bright red letters next to Flight 1372's departure time. The screens flickered as if nodding in agreement. "On board," Emma stood in the galley, eyes closed in silent awe when the flight attendant reappeared. "They've confirmed your privileges. I'm to deliver this formal statement." She pressed a printed slip of paper into Emma's hand. "Continental Airlines. In recognition of her appointment as Global Education Ambassador to UNESCO, we hereby acknowledge Ms. Emma Sterling's full diplomatic status. We apologize unreservedly for any distress caused by earlier actions and commit to ensuring her safety and respect on all future flights." Emma read it twice, the formal wording settling around her like a shield. Her mother slipped a hand into hers. "It's official," her mother said softly. "Your voice moved mountains today." Emma nodded, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. For a moment she let herself feel what she had earned, not just her seat, but the reverence of two global organizations. Meanwhile, at LAX's Gate 21, Derek sank into a high-backed chair behind his desk. He ran a hand through his hair, stunned by the chain of events. The terminal sat empty around him, but on his tablet the social media storm still raged. Yet above it all, the calls from UN headquarters and UNESCO had been the true turning point, proof that authority, once recognized, could not be ignored. Back on the plane, Emma stepped over the threshold from the galley to her seat. Passengers in the cabin offered nods of approval, quiet acknowledgments that transcended applause. She settled into 1A, slipping the formal letter into her binder. Her father caught her eye. "Ready for the next step?" he asked. She closed her binder with a gentle thud. "Yes," she said, voice calm but determined. "Let's finish this." As the engines roared and the first-class cabin hummed with a renewed sense of purpose, Emma felt the full weight and the full power of a single phone call. It had turned the tide, transformed humiliation into vindication, and reminded everyone on board that respect was not a commodity to be earned by appearance, but a right to be upheld by principle. And somewhere above the clouds, a 9-year-old ambassador sat ready to guide the conversation on education and equality. Proof that sometimes all it takes is one call to change everything. Emma settled back into her seat as the cabin door finally closed, the hum of the engines rising around her. The first-class cabin felt different now, warmer somehow, as if every plush seat and polished bulkhead had been infused with a new respect. She glanced down at her UNESCO ambassador card, tucked into her binder, and took a breath, bracing herself for what came next. A chime sounded from the PA, and the captain's calm voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Before we taxi to the runway, Continental Airlines would like to address an incident that occurred earlier this morning at LX Gate 21 involving our passenger, Global Education Ambassador Emma Sterling. We strive to treat every traveler with dignity and respect, and in this instance, we fell short. At this time, our station attendant, Mr. Derek Wong, will offer a formal apology." A ripple of anticipation passed through the cabin. Emma felt her heart flutter. This was the moment when unfairness would be undone in full view of every person aboard. A few moments later, the lead flight attendant stepped into the aisle, holding a handheld microphone. She nodded toward the front galley, and Emma watched as Derek Wong appeared. The slight figure in his crisp uniform, his usual confident posture bowed just a little. He cleared his throat, and the overhead lights brightened as if to draw attention. "Good morning," Derek began, voice a notch higher than he'd ever spoken into a headset scanner. He paused, scanning the cabin's rows of leather seats. "I am Derek Wong, station attendant for this flight. Earlier today, I made an unfortunate decision when I turned away Miss Emma Sterling at Gate 21. I failed to recognize her full credentials and dignity as Global Education Ambassador appointed by UNESCO. On behalf of Continental Airlines, I sincerely apologize for my actions and any distress they caused." There was a beat of silence. Then, softly at first, a single clap sounded near the front. It grew into a wave of applause that rolled back through the cabin. Emma sat very still, her chest tightening as those claps washed over her. She wiped a small, proud tear from her cheek. Derek stood for a moment longer, head bowed, then slipped back into the galley and out of sight. In his place, the flight attendant turned with a gentle smile. "Thank you for hearing that apology," she said. "Ms. Sterling, we would now like to formally invite you to take your seat among our first-class passengers." Emma's parents stood as well, stepping to the side of their daughter's seat near the aisle. Emma rose, clutching her binder to her chest. The applause followed her step by step as she walked down the aisle, each gentle whoop of support echoing beneath the overhead bins. Passengers in business suits, families with small children, a retired couple sipping coffee, all offered nods, smiles, and thrust thumbs. She reached her seat at 1A, her teddy bear already waiting on the armrest beside the plush cushion. Her mother slipped into the aisle seat on one side, her father into the one on the other. Emma eased into the window seat, heart racing with the strange exhilaration. The flight attendant appeared again, offering a warm cloth and a glass of strawberry juice. "Welcome to first class, Ambassador Sterling," she said softly. "We're honored to have you." Emma accepted the juice with a small nod of thanks. The flight attendant lingered a moment, then moved on to greet the other passengers with an apologetic smile. In that moment, Emma felt the full weight of the apology's ripple effect. Not just the words from Derek Wong, but the recognition from everyone around her that respect was not optional. Her father reached across and tucked a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. "You did it," he whispered, pride and relief shining in his eyes. Emma inhaled deeply, the sweet scent of the juice mingling with the faint tang of jet fuel carried through the vents. "We did it," she corrected, glancing at her parents and then the cabin around her. "Everyone did it by standing up." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Yes, everyone." The captain's voice chimed again over the PA. "Thank you for your patience and support. We will begin taxiing shortly. Emma, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to make things right." As the plane gently pushed back from the gate, Emma looked out the window at the sprawling airport lights fading behind them. The glow of Terminal 2 shrank in the distance, replaced by the long taxiway to the runway. She pressed her cheek against the headrest, savoring the moment of closure. A few rows back, a flight attendant lowered his voice as he refilled a passenger's coffee. "That was something," he murmured. "I've never apologized over the PA like that before." On the other side of the cabin, a mother sat with her young daughter, pointing and softly explaining, "You see how important it is to respect people, honey?" Emma closed her eyes, letting their words become part of her memory. The injustice she'd faced had been real, and yet, here in first class, it had been met with correction and care. The moment felt like a quiet victory, a testament to the power of standing firm and the kindness of strangers who refused to let her be silenced. High above Los Angeles, the plane's wheels lifted from the runway in a smooth ascent. Emma held her binder on her lap, the apology letter tucked safely inside the front cover. She thought of all the children in the world who might not get that chance, that moment of public acknowledgement, and felt a renewed sense of responsibility. When the seatbelt sign blinked off, Emma unzipped her backpack, pulled out her notebook, and began jotting down thoughts for her speech at the UNESCO summit. Her words came easier now, brimming with the certainty that real change begins with respect. Below, Gate 21 lay silent under the dawn sky. Derek Wong's apology had been heard, but more importantly, Emma's right to be seen had been affirmed. And as the jet climbed into the clouds, Emma Sterling, Global Education Ambassador, leaned forward, ready to carry the lessons of this flight into every corner of her young world. Emma eased back into her plush first-class seat as the seatbelt sign winked off, the gentle hum of cruising altitude settling through the cabin. She took a moment to let it all sink in. The morning's turmoil, the apology, the roar of public support. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now, with a soft glow from the overhead reading lamp, she was exactly where she belonged. A flight attendant in navy slacks and a crisp white blouse approached, holding a tablet and a genuine smile. "Ms. Sterling, may I invite you to the crew lounge for a quick photo?" she asked. "We'd love to feature you in our in-flight magazine." Emma's heart did a little flip. "Really?" she asked, voice bright. "Absolutely," the attendant said, tapping the screen. "Just down these stairs and to the left. It's our backstage, where the crew unwinds between flights." Her parents exchanged delighted looks. Emma slipped from her seat, gently placing her teddy bear next to her backpack, and followed the attendant down the short stairwell into the small, modern crew lounge tucked behind the first-class cabin. The space was warm, soft lighting, a wall of big windows framing the clouds drifting by, and a small counter stacked with fresh fruit and sparkling water. A photographer from Continental's in-flight magazine was already there, camera in hand. He glanced up and said, "Emma, perfect timing. Let's get a shot of you with the crew." Around him stood a handful of flight attendants and pilots, all beaming. Emma took a deep breath and straightened her pastel mule tee. She stepped into the center of the group, hugging her binder against her body. The photographer counted down, 3, 2, 1, and snapped a burst of images as Emma laughed, genuinely at ease. "Thank you," she said afterward, stepping out of the group. A senior flight attendant handed her a small laminated card, First Class Crew Honorary Badge. It featured the airline's logo in gleaming gold, with Emma's name etched beneath. "Wear this with pride," the attendant told her. "You earned it today." Emma's eyes lit up. She pinned it to her binder strap, where it caught the light like a tiny medal. "I will," she promised. Back in her seat, Emma unzipped her backpack and retrieved her notebook, tucking the honorary badge safely inside the front pocket before jotting down details. She wanted to remember every moment, the photographer's gentle direction, the sound of cameras clicking, the warmth in her crew's eyes. A refreshing breeze from the vent above carried the faint aroma of citrus. Hand towels, the attendant explained later, scented to relax guests. Emma looked out the window at the cloud bank rolling beneath them and let herself smile. Mom settled into the aisle seat beside her, handing over a glass of sparkling water. "You look radiant," she said. "I'm so proud of you." Emma took the water with a grateful nod. "Thank you, Mom," she replied. "It's like everything turned around. From the moment I got that apology on the PA to now, this feels like a celebration." Her father leaned forward, voice low. "You know, Emma, today's photo op will run in our in-flight magazine next month. They might even feature your story on the airline's social media channels." Emma grinned. "Seriously?" "Yep. People love a good underdog story," he said with a chuckle. Ahead, the lead flight attendant stepped into the aisle again. "Miss Sterling," she said with a warm nod, "I'd like to invite you to try our new first-class menu. Our chef designed a special strawberry basil sorbet in your honor. The ambassador's delight. Would you like to sample it?" Emma's eyes widened. "I'd love to." Emma's heart fluttered as the wheels of Flight 1372 kissed the tarmac at JFK. Through the oval window, she glimpsed the gray expanse of runway and the tail fins of other Continental jets, lined up like sentinels under the overcast New York sky. She straightened her pastel mood tee, clean and simple, but now earned with every step she'd taken, and opened her binder to check her notes one last time. Her parents were at her side, equally poised. "Ready?" her father asked, voice soft. Emma slid the binder closed, nodded, and together they rose from their seats. The first-class cabin, still humming with residual pride and polite applause from the apology, gave way to a brisk walk down the jetway. At the bottom, they were met by Marcus Washington, Emma's steadfast ally since the morning's chaos, who ushered them into a sleek shuttle van waiting on the ramp. The drive to Continental's New York corporate center was quick. Under the East River tunnels, past glittering office towers, and onto lower Manhattan's narrow streets. Emma pressed her forehead against the glass, watching neon signs and yellow cabs blur past. The city's pulse was different from LAX's open expanse. Here, energy crackled. They arrived at a glass facade rising above Water Street, Continental's New York hub. Inside, a receptionist smiled, took Emma's ambassador card and board member ID, then directed them to the executive elevators. The doors slid closed with a soft hiss, carrying Emma, her parents, and Marcus upward to the 38th floor. The conference room awaited, floor-to-ceiling windows stretching down the East River, a panoramic view of bridges and barges below. A long mahogany table stood center, surrounded by high-backed leather chairs. Around it sat the full board of directors, silver-haired executives, former pilots turned strategists, legal counsel, and the CFO who'd praised Emma's fuel efficiency plan. The room fell quiet as Emma entered. Her small form contrasted against the adult formality. The CEO, seated at the head, rose and extended a hand. "Emma," he said with genuine warmth, "thank you for joining us in New York. Your vote is critical." Emma stepped forward, shaking his hand. She felt her pulse quicken. This board controlled billions of dollars, shaped thousands of jobs, and she was right here, one of them. She took her seat between the COO and the head of finance, setting her binder in front of her. The CEO cleared his throat. "As you know, today we finalized the vote on our proposed $2 billion 0-cents merger with Skyway Holdings. We've discussed market projections, regulatory hurdles, and integration plans. Now we'll move to a final statement from our youngest member, Emma Sterling." Emma inhaled. Her palms were cool, her posture straight. She uncapped her pen and lifted her notes. Everyone's eyes were on her. Kind, encouraging gazes that reminded her of the UN Summit's ambassadorial chamber. "Thank you," she began, voice measured but warm. "Over the past 6 months, I've worked on our carbon simulation program and passenger safety surveys. I believe this merger presents us with a unique opportunity to leverage combined resources, both financial and human, to accelerate our sustainable initiatives. By uniting with Skyway, we can reduce per-flight emissions by an additional 7% through shared fleet upgrades and expand our youth outreach programs globally." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. She tapped her slide's final bullet. "Education partnerships and community resilience. The merger isn't just about numbers," she continued. "It's about people. Our flight crews, our ground staff, and the families we serve. It's about ensuring that every traveler anywhere in the world experiences safety, dignity, and respect. As part of our Youth Advisory Council, I've seen how a child's voice can shape policy. I ask you to support this merger not only for market growth, but for the promise it holds: cleaner skies, stronger communities, and a future where travel unites rather than divides." A soft murmur of approval swept the room. Emma closed her binder and met the CFO's eyes. He nodded, satisfied. The CEO then said, "Thank you, Emma. The floor is now open for the roll call vote." One by one, board members announced their decisions. Yes, yes, yes. When it came to Marcus Washington, he lifted his chin. Yes. Finally, the CEO himself cast the chair's tie-making vote. Yes. Completing a unanimous decision. A subdued round of applause followed. Emma felt a surge of relief and triumph. Her small voice, once silenced at Gate 21, had helped steer a merger that would define Continental's future. The CEO rose again. "It's done. I congratulate each of you on this milestone, and Emma, thank you for your integrity and insight. You're a true asset to this board." Emma stood, and the assembled executives offered their hands and words of praise. A veteran pilot turned director with silver spectacles patted her shoulder. "Well said, young lady." Her mother and father joined her, pride gleaming in their eyes. "You were incredible," her mother whispered. Emma smiled, voice soft. "We did it together." Marcus stepped beside them. "Let me buy you all lunch," he offered. "In the cafeteria, they have the best clam chowder in the city." Emma grinned. "I'd like that." Before they left the room, the CEO handed Emma a slim, navy leather booklet. Her official board minutes copy with her name on the cover. Inside, the first page recorded the merger's approval and listed Emma Sterling, member, board of directors, in print, as crisp as her own handshake. Later, as they walked toward the corporate cafeteria, Emma reflected on the day's journey, the humiliation at Gate 21, the apology over the PA, the social media outcry, and the global calls of support. Those events had led her here, to this moment of collective decision-making. Outside the window, the city pulsed. Taxis honked, pedestrians hurried, and the river glinted under scattered sunlight. Emma felt connected, to the city, to her airline, and to a larger purpose. She had spoken up when it mattered, and had seen the power of a single voice amplified by community. In the cafeteria's bright lights, surrounded by colleagues turned friends, Emma Sterling, the 9-year-old board member, picked up a spoon of chowder and savored the warmth. She thought of the children who might one day follow her path, and she made a silent promise to keep using her seat at the table, any table, to make the world kinder, cleaner, and fairer. And as the first spoonful slid into her mouth, she realized that this was only the beginning of her story. Mom and Dad smiled as Emma followed the attendant to the galley, where a small bowl of pale pink sorbet gleamed under the cabin lights. She took a spoonful, and the cool sweetness was a bright spark on her tongue. "It's delicious," she said, mouth half full. "Thank you." "You're welcome," the attendant replied. "It's our way of saying thanks for your patience and for inspiring so many." Emma nodded, savoring the moment. She closed her eyes and let herself feel proud, her earlier fear and humiliation fading into something softer, like the tailwind pushing them eastward. When she returned to her seat, she found a small pile of letters waiting on her tray table, handwritten thank you notes from other passengers who'd sent them up through the crew. One was from a grandmother traveling to visit her daughter in New York. "Your strength today reminded me to speak up for myself," it read. Another from a businesswoman. "I've been judged by appearances my whole life. You gave me hope." Emma's eyes misted as she read each one. She tucked them into her notebook and whispered, "Thank you, everyone." Her mother reached across and squeezed her hand. "You're making a difference, Emma." She tapped her notebook. "Difference matters." Then she noticed a little boy in the row behind them, wide-eyed, holding a miniature model plane. He looked embarrassed to be watching, so Emma leaned back and gave him a reassuring smile. He offered a shy wave, and she waved back. It wasn't lost on her that she'd gone from being the one dismissed in a casual tea to the one other kids looked up to, literally in the rows above. Her past self would hardly believe it. As the flight attendant distributed menus and wine lists, Emma scanned hers, then closed it thoughtfully. She didn't need the menu to know she'd already had food for thought. Respect, apology, vindication, community. The plane's gentle seatbelt chime sounded as the purser's voice came over the PA one last time. "Thank you for flying with us. Ambassador Sterling, we are honored to have you aboard. Enjoy the rest of your flight." Emma leaned back, eyes drifting shut for a moment. She pictured herself at the UN summit podium, notes in hand, ready to speak about education, equality, and the power of a single voice. She thought of Gate 21's velvet rope and Derek Wong's cold rejection, and then of this moment. Warm, crowded with applause, brimming with possibility. She smiled, tracing the edge of her honorary badge. The injustice had been real, but the justice she'd helped restore was even more so. As the first-class cabin slid into a soft lull, Emma Sterling felt the comforting weight of her own conviction. The world was watching, and she had shown them that dignity wasn't about what you wore. It was about standing up, speaking out, and letting quiet resolve lead the way. And at 9 years old, she was just getting started. The cabin lights were dimmed to a soft glow when Emma felt the gentle buzz at her elbow. She opened her eyes to see the lead flight attendant holding out a microphone. "Miss Sterling," she said quietly, "we'd be honored if you'd share a few words with our passengers before we begin our descent." Emma's heart fluttered. Already her nerves were tingling, but she nodded. Clutching her binder to her chest, she rose from seat 1A on flight 5042, bound for Chicago. Around her, first-class passengers turned in their seats, anticipation flickering across their faces. A hush fell over the cabin, the kind of respectful stillness you hear only when something important is about to happen. She stepped into the aisle, her pastel moon t-shirt catching the overhead light. Below her, the seats formed a semicircle of attentive listeners. Families returning home, business travelers closing laptops, seniors on a leisurely trip. In the back, the flight crew peeked around the bulkhead, their expressions warm, encouraging. Taking a breath, Emma raised the microphone. Her voice, when it came, was calm, steady, but charged with sincerity. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emma Sterling, Global Education Ambassador with UNESCO and member of Continental's Board of Directors. Today, I'd like to speak briefly about something we all share: the right to be treated with respect, no matter where we come from or what we wear." She paused, letting the words settle. A baby cooed softly in the row behind her. An elderly woman nodded, eyes bright. Emma found her center in that silence. "This morning at LAX, I was nearly turned away from first class simply because of my attire. But thanks to the courage of bystanders, the call from UNESCO, and the support of each of you, here on this flight, we corrected that mistake." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Emma pressed on. "Respect isn't a privilege reserved for some. It's a right that belongs to every traveler. The grandmother revisiting family, the student on her first flight, the crew who make our journeys possible. When we honor that right, we don't just make one person's day better, we strengthen the bonds that connect us all." Her gaze swept the cabin. "I ask you today, in your own lives, remember to look beyond first impressions. A simple smile, a kind word, or a moment of patience can transform someone's journey. It certainly transformed mine." A gentle round of applause broke out, soft, sincere. Emma allowed herself a small smile and closed the microphone. "Thank you," she said, voice warm. She ducked back to her seat, her cheeks tinged with relief. Back in 1A, Emma sank into her cushion and opened her binder as if to hide behind it. But her parents reached across and squeezed her hands instead. Around her, passengers resumed their seats, but the atmosphere had changed. A bright sense of community now hummed beneath the cabin's calm. Moments later, the purser's voice came over the PA. "Thank you, Miss Sterling, for that powerful reminder. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our descent, please join me in a round of applause for our ambassador." A wave of clapping rippled through all cabins, far louder this time, echoing off bulkheads and seatbacks. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, tears of pride and gratitude. She glanced at her mother, who nodded with tears of her own. Her father offered a proud thumbs up. Across the aisle, a young man in a suit mouthed, "Well done," and smiled. It was the applause of genuine connection. As Flight 5042 dipped toward the Midwest skies, Emma tucked the microphone away and placed her binder on her lap. She opened her notebook and quickly jotted a note to herself. Respect is everywhere. Keep sharing it. The flight attendant reappeared with a small card. Respect all travelers, printed in bold letters beneath a globe icon. "We thought you might like this," she said, drifting back as Emma pinned the card to her binder strap. Emma settled in for the final minutes of descent, watching the Chicago skyline form under thick clouds. She thought of all the stories she'd heard on this plane, grandmothers longing for family, professionals on the move, children discovering the world, and knew that each of them had carried more than luggage. They carried dignity. When the seatbelt sign chimed off and the cabin door opened to the cool Chicago air, Emma rose to stand once more. The cabin crew and first-class passengers alike offered gentle applause as she moved down the aisle. Some reached out to shake her hand. Others pressed small notes into her palms. "Thank you for reminding me. You lifted my spirits. Keep speaking up." At the jetway's threshold, Emma paused and turned back. She raised her hand in a small wave, and the cabin responded, smiles, waves, nods. In that instant, she felt the power of one quiet voice, magnified by countless hearts. Stepping off the plane with her parents and crew beside her, Emma Sterling knew that today's speech was more than a moment on a flight. It was a ripple of change, an affirmation of respect that would travel far beyond any jetway or runway. And as she walked into the terminal, passport and ambassador card secure in her backpack, she vowed to carry that message everywhere she went. Dignity knows no borders, and respect is a journey we take together. Emma stepped off the jetway into the cool Chicago morning air, her pastel mule t-shirt catching the faint glow of the overhead lamps. She paused, closing her eyes and lifting her diplomatic passport in one hand, the embossed UN seal gleaming against the dark leather cover. Beside her, her mother and father exchanged proud smiles, and even Marcus Washington, now her champion and friend, looked on with something like awe. They walked together down the corridor toward baggage claim, Emma's honorary first-class crew badge pinned to her backpack strap. Every so often a passenger would nod or offer a thumbs up, a silent salute to the little ambassador who had turned an airport confrontation into a lesson in respect and dignity. Emma returned each gesture with a warm, shy smile. At the luggage carousel, her teddy bear tumbled off the belt inside its travel bag. Emma scooped it up, hugging it close. It had been her confidant all day, witnessing her lowest and highest moments. Now, it got a front-row seat to the reunion with her parents, and to the next chapter of her own story. "What's our plan, Ambassador?" her father asked, voice playful. Emma looked at her mother, then back at her dad and grinned. "Let's go home and unpack. Then," she held up her passport and binder, "we share this story with the world." They piled into a waiting SUV that whisked them away from O'Hare, past early morning commuters and gray storefronts. The city skyline receded in their rearview mirror as Emma's thoughts turned inward. 6 planes, 2 coasts, 1 rooftop summit, countless emails of support. Her journey had been nothing short of epic for a 9-year-old. Back in Highland Park, their suburban street was quiet. Neighbors, still in their pajamas, waved as the Sterling family carried bags through the front door. Emma's mother set down the souvenir sorbet bowl. Her father extracted the UN passport from her backpack, and together they settled around the kitchen table, legs dangling off chairs. Emma pulled out her notebook, a now well-worn log of thoughts, and began flipping through. On the inside cover, she'd written in big letters, "Respect belongs to everyone." Underneath were scribbles, ideas for school assemblies, questions for community leaders, plans for a youth-led mural celebrating diversity. Her mother reached over and laid a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "You know, sweetie, Tomorrow we'll upload your video. You ready to talk to the camera? Emma nodded, swallowing a small lump of nerves. I am, her father smiled. Because when you tell people your story, they'll share theirs. And so, that afternoon, the living room became her stage. The Sterling family propped up a tablet on the coffee table, framing Emma against the soft glow of a lamp and the familiar backdrop of their flag pennant collection, a mix of UN flags, Continental Airlines banners, and childhood artwork. Emma pressed record and took a breath. Hi, I'm Emma Sterling, she said, her voice clear. I'm 9 years old, and today I want to tell you about something that happened at the airport. I was wearing a simple t-shirt and sneakers, and a flight attendant said I didn't belong in first class, but right before I walked onto the plane, people spoke up for me. Thousands of you shared a video with, "Let her board." The UN and UNESCO called the airline to say I had diplomatic privileges, and in the end, everyone apologized, and I got to fly first class, talk to global leaders, and vote on a $2 billion 0-cents merger. Emma paused, eyes bright. This isn't just my story. It's proof that respect isn't about clothes or age or titles. It's about listening to each other and standing up for what's right. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been judged by what you wear, or by someone else's first glance? Please share your story in the comments below. Let's build a community where everyone is welcome, no matter how you look or what you carry. She tapped the screen to end the recording and turned to her parents. How is that? Her mother wiped a tear away. Perfect. Later that evening, as the video went live, Emma's parents sat beside her on the couch, watching the share count climb. 1,000, 5, 0, 20, 0. Comments poured in. I cried, thank you for speaking up. My daughter struggled with bullying. This gives her hope. So proud of you, Emma. You're an inspiration. Emma's chest swelled with something warmer than pride. Connection. Real people from all walks of life were echoing her experiences and finding strength in her words. She replied to a few comments herself, typing carefully, "Thank you for sharing, Maria. Your story matters." As the sun set beyond their living room window, the Sterling family gathered around a scrap of poster paper and markers. They were sketching out ideas for an online gallery of stories, photos, and notes from viewers who had overcome judgment. Emma drew a long jetway ribbon winding through headlines and personal narratives. Her parents added notes, partner with local schools, host community workshops. Above it all, Emma wrote in bold marker, "Respect takes flight." Later, as Emma brushed her teeth that night, she looked in the mirror and saw the girl who'd once been terrified at Gate 21. Now she saw someone who had helped reframe an entire conversation about dignity. Someone whose voice mattered, whether at a boarding gate or a global summit. Her mother tucked her into bed, planting a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Sweet dreams, Ambassador." Emma closed her eyes, the hush of Highland Park night wrapping around her. Tomorrow she would wake up, download new comments, and continue building the gallery. The airplane lights had faded behind her, but the spark of change was just beginning. And somewhere in digital corners around the world, other voices, new stories lit by her beacon, would rise, joining the chorus she'd invited to uplift each other, one comment at a time. Because respect isn't a destination, it's a journey we take together, one story at a time.